Shabbat Shalom. A lot to get to tonight. Thank you, everybody, for joining me and making this a part of your weekly tradition in your home. And, 2 months ago, I came forward and said that I said that there was a bit of a change in terms of how Tuck is going to be operating, and that I started asking for your financial support. And the reason being is that we were going to become a single income household here in the Hadley household, and I wanted my wife to not work anymore, and of course she's pregnant with our next child. We're not spring chickens anymore. And in the last 2 months, I think it's safe to say that I have, it's almost like I've attracted the gaze of this darkness. I fully under Yah's protection, but the attacks that have come, the spiritual attacks have really ramped up over the last couple of months. Unbelievable, unprecedented in the history of my ministry through the unexpected cosmology and even beforehand. And give you guys a bit of what's going on. I mean, here, let me just turn over here right now. Take a look at this, the unexpected cosmology of the website. This might be rebooted before the weekend's over. This may be the last time you see this. We're going to go with something much simpler. The whether you want to call it a Trojan horse, I'm not a software engineer. I feel like more it's like a battering ram, but there had been so much bad coding getting slipped in and the attacks coming through, trying to take down the website. For all of you out there that are Patreon supporters, I have been getting complaint after complaint after complaint for probably about 3 weeks now from those who are not able to access this website, not able to go into the subscriber content, can't even go into the store, can't purchase items. So we're unable to deal with this situation as is. And we're just going to come up with a new website. And I think probably in the next week, maybe again, before the weekend's over, we're going to have a brand new store. We're going to have a brand new store, and it's going to take a lot more work on our end to update everything. So for those of you who are who do subscribe, who do support this ministry, thank you very much. Just know that the transition into April might be a little sticky. All right. We're going to try our best to make it a smooth sailing, but it's, I don't know what can be done about it at this point. So take one last look, gaze around the websites, and it's going to look it might look very different in the next couple of days, even before, midnight. I don't really know. Speaking of fundraisers, 2 months ago, I asked for your support. And then again, I asked for your support in March. You guys poured out your heart. Thank you so much. I'm not asking anybody to do anything physically on the Sabbath day. This is just something that, as we're coming together as a community, just to watch out for, put it on your mind. And the goal this month that I'm trying to reach is $5,200. The reason being is that there's about $3,000 that have already been sent to me by donors. Thank you all very much. And this is what we have left for April, $5,200. And, just if this ministry means anything to you, that the content I put out, if this has affected your life, if you want to see this continue, please pray about it. Ask God what you can do to sacrifice and give to this ministry. Again, I thank you very much. I'm trying to, I see myself as a missionary, a shepherd as well, but a missionary, and to those who are seeking for the truth, right? And this is one of the big reasons that I put a lot of I love the truther content, and I put it out there. But one of the reasons I do these Torah portions every single week is because I want people to come to my channel through the content and go, what's this? Wow, he's going through the Torah. What is this? And they start watching. And we've seen it grow. We've seen these Torah portions grow every single week. We started out with like an average of like 600 people, and we're over 1,000 now. So since starting this year, going through Genesis, Exodus, and now we're just starting Leviticus, second week, we've grown by about 400 to 500, I'd say about 400 people per week on average. That's really good. I'm excited to see the growth. I'm excited to see more and more people write me each and every week going, this Torah seems right, but I don't know how to do this. How do I do this? And my advice to everybody is just start keeping the Sabbath. Start with the 10 commandments. There's the 4th commandment. Just start keeping that one. Start keeping the Sabbath. And when you're keeping the Sabbath, start reading through the Torah, and start doing what it says. And, it takes you a few years of going through it, but eventually it starts clicking and coming together. So anyways, thank you everyone for your support. Let's get right into it tonight because I have a lot to cover. This is our second week in Leviticus, week 25. I should probably stop putting the weeks because I'm afraid I'm like going to count up wrong. But 25th week of going through the Torah portions. And like I said, we've grown by about 400 households, I think, per week on average. That's exciting. March 29th. Now, next week is going to be interesting. I'm not sure how it's going to work out. It's going to be a big event at my household. We're celebrating Passover. Of course, we're going this year by the full moon. And so a lot of people, I think, kept Passover last weekend, and inevitably today, just coincidentally, is Good Friday. So the rest of the world is celebrating Easter this weekend. We're doing it next weekend, the day before the eclipse. The eclipse is on the 8th. We're doing it on the 7th. So how exciting is that? It'll be Matzah, the first day of Matzah for us when the eclipse happens. And there's my ministry team, my admins, mods, people that have been in my corner for a long time. They're coming from all over the country, from California and Idaho and Arkansas and just all over. And so I'm excited to have them come out, and hopefully maybe a few of them. Pamela will be at my house next weekend, as will Rebecca. Maybe I can rope Rebecca into doing something. I'm not really sure, being part of the conversation. But she may play hardball. But anyways, we'll see what happens next weekend. It'll be interesting discussion. So last week, quick review, Pamela visited. And for those of you who don't know, Pamela is the translator of the Paleo Hebrew that we're going through. She translated Genesis, Exodus, and Leviticus, and she's working on Numbers right now. And she's got a lot more planned. But anyway, she came by and she talked about the translation and the name Yahuwah and Allahayam, as well as the priest's breastplate, among many other things. We began Leviticus. I explained to you that 247 of the 613 instructions in the Torah can be found in Leviticus. Leviticus is considered the heart of the Torah, to the point that throughout history, at least since the Second Temple period, it appears as though children that were in the covenant, that were being raised in the covenant, were learned to read with Vayikra. That would be Leviticus, because of course Vayikra would be the modern Hebrew, not the Paleo. And I showed you that last week there were 5 types of offerings that were covered in Leviticus 1 through 5: the Olah, the Mincha, the Shilamim, the Chatat, and the Asham. That would be the elevation, grain, peace, sin, and guilt offering. And how 3 of those were actually voluntary. And the peace offering, the Shalom offering, I'll be particularly focusing on tonight. 2 of them are obligatory. They're sin and guilt offerings. But as I pointed out, there is intentional sin versus unintentional sin. This is something that's not taught in Christianity. I was never taught it. That apparently there's no sacrifice for an intentional sin. There's unintentional sins, which you can, when you learn afterwards that you have sins. And this is a big part of the promise in Deuteronomy once we get there, that once Israel's divorced from Yah and they're cast out into the nations, in the end times, when they start waking up again and they start calling upon his name, that he will be merciful to them. He will be gracious to them, and he'll bring them back, and they will learn of their sins and they can repent of it. But the idea is, once you come into the covenant, you're not to intentionally sin anymore. Like you don't do it. And we looked at one example where it appears that there is like one intentional sin that you can repent of. I guess if you break into someone's house and you steal their things, you can repent of that. And we looked at ascending offerings as spiritual sacrifices. I put there ruachul. That's not even a word. Ruachul sacrifices, but spiritual sacrifices. All right. Now, this is one thing I wanted to cover last week, and I didn't get to it, but this is too good to pass up, especially since I'm sure we'll be seeing plenty more of salt in Leviticus, a covenant of salt. And this is what we read in QURA 2:13. And every sacrifice from your gift offering, you shall salt with salt. All right. So every sacrifice you shall salt with salt. And you shall not desist the salt of the berayath of your alaha from over your gift offering, over all your sacrifices, you shall bring near with salt. And notice there the key is you shall bring near to you. You are approaching Yahweh. It's almost like that, that scene in the Wizard of Oz when they had to, even though the Oz was the wizard was a humbug, but you guys know my drift when they had to like approach the wizard. And I always think about that, what that's like you're in the presence of Yahuwah and you've got your meats or your bread and your salt, and you're like kind of walking up to him. So this here, I copied and pasted this article. It comes Times of India, and I thought it was really interesting on salt. So I'm just going to read this for you guys. And right here, you can see this picture. These two ladies are in a kind of like a healing room, and the walls are built out of salt. In many religious practices and cultures, salt signifies preservation and the binding of a spiritual covenant. The use of salt in rituals, like sprinkling during ceremonies or forming protective barriers, showcases its significance in warding off negative energies and evil spirits. That's kind of interesting. Not just the negative energies, but the evil spirits. Its association with life-sustaining properties aligns with spiritual beliefs, as it mirrors the sustenance of both the physical body and the soul, reinforcing its revered status in the realm of spirituality. Now, salt is very dualistic. We'll be looking at it. It's alchemical. And so it's interesting to see there about warding off evil spirits, when in fact, on the opposite end, we're going to see that too much salt actually is a habitation for evil spirits. One of the primary ways salt is used in healing is through purification and cleansing rituals. The practice often involves sprinkling or placing salt in specific areas, believing it absorbs impurities and negative vibrations. In several traditions, salt is placed on corners of the house or on the entrance to ward off negative energies. This age-old tradition of salt-based purification transcends generations, offering a tangible way to promote clarity, renewal, and spiritual well-being, making salt an integral element in rituals and holistic practices around the world. Salt's therapeutic use in baths extends beyond a mere bathing ritual. Epsom salt, rich in magnesium and sulfate, has been cherished for its stress-relieving and muscle-soothing properties for generations. Likewise, Dead Sea salt, abundant in essential minerals, offers detoxification and skin benefits. When dissolved in warm water, these salts create a tranquil bathing experience, promoting relaxation and balancing one's energy. The soak is thought to draw out toxins, so it detoxes you, both physically and emotionally, aiding in the release of tension and fostering a profound sense of well-being. This age-old practice encapsulates the healing potential of salt baths and enhancing overall vitality. So this right here is a picture of a Himalayan salt lamp. Himalayan salt lamps, made from pink Himalayan salt crystals, have gained popularity for their potential healing properties. Advocates claim that these lamps emit ions that neutralize negative energy, thus enhancing mood, reducing stress, and improving indoor air quality. While scientific evidence is still inconclusive, many individuals find comfort and relaxation in the warm, soothing glow of these salt lamps. Salt holds a sacred significance in various religions, sprinkling its essence into spiritual practices around the world. In Christianity, it symbolizes purity and preservation, used in rituals like the blessing of holy water. In Hinduism, salt is known as lavana and is an essential element in rituals representing the eternal essence of life. In Judaism, It is part of the covenant between God and the Jewish people. That would be the covenant of salt, which we'll be talking about, and to the bread in the form of challah, highlighting the sweetness of life. Even in ancient Roman times, salt was considered a symbol of incorruptibility, influencing the Latin phrase salus per aquam, or health through water. And that comes from the Times of India. Right now, this is a Talmudic text, and this is what we read. Salt possesses two contradictory powers, water and fire. So this is the alchemical end of it that I'm going to be talking a little bit about tonight, which correspond to the two qualities by which the world exists: the attribute of mercy and the attribute of strict justice. So the water would be the mercy, it would be the health, and the fire would be the justice. For this reason, Allah Hayam says, the salts of the covenant of your Allah Hayam. The covenant of Allah Hayam is compared to salt, because through it, the world is either preserved or destroyed. There's your theme. So it's interesting to think about this, like the salt covenant between Allah Hayam, or I would say Yahuwah, and man. It's like it's the blessing or the curse. If you keep to the salt covenant, that's the blessing. If you keep to the curse, we have Sodom and Gomorrah to think about. Salt can preserve or it can destroy. It preserves meat and gives flavor to all foods, but it also has the potential to cause death and destruction. After all, land that has been salted with will fail to produce any vegetation. And that was the promise with Sodom and Gomorrah, that there would be no more vegetation there. And to this day, there's no vegetation. This comes from Pythagoras. Had to slip him in here. And when I was thinking, if I'm going to have like a discussion about salts and alchemy, I got to find a quote from Pythagoras, or I'm sorry, Pythagoras. For the rest of my life, I'm going to say Pythagoras, but Pythagoras. Sorry. This is what happens when you educate yourself in books. It should be brought to the table to remind us of what is right, for salt preserves whatever it finds, and it arises from the purest sources, the sun and the sea. So there's the water and the fire. The sun would be the justice, and the sea itself would be the life-giving factor in these regards. Now, this guy here, Aaron Cheek, PhD, I put his little online signature there. He likes to spread his letters out, so I just thought I'd include that. This is what he had to say. The understanding of salt as a product of sun and sea, of fire and water, or Oranos and Oceanos, touches on its broader esoteric and cosmological implications, not all of which were peculiar to Pythagoras. These aspects become central in alchemy, where, as will be seen, salt acts as the earthly ligature between fire and water, the arcane substance whose patent ambiguities stem from its role as embodiment and juncture of opposites, purity and impurity, eros and enmity, wetness and desiccation, fertility and sterility, love and strife. Now, he has a whole article. He says, as we will see. I wanted to get that there, all the ways that there's two opposites, eros and enmity, right? Like war and love, right? Complete opposites. I'll flesh that out a little bit in a second here. So let's talk about Aphrodite. This is an article called Aphrodite, Sex and Salt, from Butterfly to Man. How exciting does this article sound? I could probably read from the whole thing. It'd be fascinating, but I picked out this little quote here. The relation between salt and sexuality is a matter for serious consideration. Some of you are like, some of you were invited here. Like, what kind of Bible study is this? Let me read this again. The relation between salt and sexuality is a matter for serious consideration, both with regard to an ancient myth related to Aphrodite and with regard to the association between salt appetite and reproduction. Restriction of salt intake has major effects on procreation, gestation, and lactation. Salt-induced alterations of physiological functions and sexual behavior have already been presumed by the ancient Greeks. Later on, these assumptions received scientific support. The goddess in the act of giving birth transposes crude sexuality into creative energy. In the Aegean world, Aphrodite, goddess of love, prevents sterility and facilitates mating and procreation. Now, okay, well, here I talked about this just the other night when I gave my talk on the Pilgrim's Path, travels through the millennial kingdom, and you can see the shell. I talked about the shell and how it's a sign of the resurrection, and the pilgrims would wear shells on them in the Dark Ages, and you could see some sacred geometry there. Don't need to go through all that, but that's Aphrodite. Now, I was kind of hesitant today because I'm like, okay, we're going through a Torah study, and I don't want to I'm not here to teach you about the other gods, and some of you are going to see this the wrong way. From my perspective, there's a couple things happening. One is that the gods, the mystery religions come through the Watchers, and that the Watchers brought the mysteries of heaven, and they brought worthless mysteries because they didn't teach the Torah. They didn't instruct people in the righteousness of Yahuwah. There's that. But on the other end, we have the Sethite religion, which came down to Shem and to the Shemites, and I was to say the Semitic cultures, and to the Hebrews, and we know that there was a pure religion, at least from Noah and Shem on the ark, and we could talk about Ham later, but it all became corrupted mostly through Ham. And so a lot of the different pagan religions out there, you can see elements in there that actually go back to the beginning, to Scripture. And what happens is I have to be careful in these conversations because there are a lot of people weak in the faith. As soon as they hear, because they've been lied to their whole life, and as soon as they hear that there are similarities that can be found in Scripture with the surrounding mystery religions, they're like, it's not true, all of it, I was wrong. They throw the baby out with the bathwater. They're like, I'm done. And they don't see it from the other perspective, the perspective of the Watchers, the perspective of, it really comes down to what somebody believes, right? So here's a quote here from Hesiod. I'm not going to actually quote the whole thing. It talks about the creation of Aphrodite, how one god, gets his genitals chopped off, thrown in the sea, and it starts bubbling up there and foaming. And then we read that the gods and men call her Aphrodite, the foam born, because she grew amid the foam. So the idea is that she came out of the salty sea. She was born of salt. So this is what Wikipedia says here about Aphrodite. This is just the opening paragraph. Aphrodite is an ancient Greek goddess associated with love, lust, beauty, pleasure, passion, procreation, and her syncretized Roman goddess counterpart Venus, desire, sex, fertility, prosperity, and victory. Her major symbols include seashells, myrtles, roses, doves, sparrows, and swans. This is kind of interesting. The cult of Aphrodite, a lot of you guys know this, the cult of Aphrodite was largely derived from that of the Phoenician goddess Astarte, which comes from the East Semitic goddess Ishtar, whose cult was based on the Sumerian cult of Inanna. And we get into Nimrodic worship and Semiramis and so on and so forth. Now, I'm of the opinion that Aphrodite is a corruption of the feminine Ruach HaKodesh. Okay. Some people would, anything you would connect, anything that people might see of the feminine Ruach HaKodesh that connects to Aphrodite, some people would see that's proof the Bible is it's fake. It's like, no, actually, it actually verifies it in a lot of ways. It would make sense that if there is a creator God, and he's telling a story, and then there's sin, and it breaks out from there, that you're going to have a lot of commonalities in all these other religions. The fact that there's all these commonalities in different religions, just for me, is further verification that the Bible is true. So we see Aphrodite connected with doves, right? And the fertility is really interesting too, and coming out of the salt water. I mean, what do we see with Ruach HaKodesh? going over the ocean, the waters of the earth, the creation, anticipating the birth of her children, all these things happening, right? Well, who is she paired with but Mars? Now, we're still thinking about salt here, okay? In ancient Roman religion mythology, Mars is the god of war and also an agricultural guardian. Well, that's interesting because war is the opposite of love, right? Apparently, opposites attract. I put that right here. Here's a picture of them. I'm going to keep scanning because that's kind of sensual now that I think about it. But Mars and Aphrodite. So you got these two types of salt. You got the salt that destroys, the salt of justice, as brought about by Mars, and then you got the salt of love and procreation. So this is what it says in Judges 9:45. So Abimelech fought against the city Shechem all that day. He took the city and killed the people who were in it, and he demolished the city and sowed it with salt. So there we have an example in the Bible, a Mars type of example, esoterically speaking, we don't see salt that is rejuvenating or healing salt. He's going in and just putting all the salt in the field so they can never grow in it again. And then we see the classic example, another example of judgment in Bereshith 19:26. But Lot's wife looked back and she became a pillar of salt. Why did she become a pillar of salt? I think she was in the blast zone. It was like, get out of there in a hurry. And she had obviously a longing for the civilization. Some people say it was curiosity. There's a few different explanations given, but she was in the blast zone. And I think she didn't, and Lot's like, dude, I'm still going. I can't stop you. Or I can't get you to keep running, but whatever. All right. So what's the next example here? We see Deuteronomy 29:21. Yahweh would not spare him, for then the anger of Yahweh and his jealousy would burn against that man. And every curse that is written in this book would settle on him, and Yahweh would blot out his name from under heaven, and Yahweh would separate him from all the tribes of Yasharel for adversity, according to all the curses of the covenant that are written in this book of the Torah. So think about the curse here, right? They're choosing the curse rather than the blessing. So that the coming generation of your children who rise up after you and the foreigner who comes from a far land would say, when they see the plagues of that land, the sickness which Yahweh has laid on it, the whole land is brimstone, salt, and burning. It is not sown, nor does it bear, nor does any grass grow there, like the overthrow of Sodom and Gomorrah, Admah and Zeboim, which Yahweh overthrew in his anger and his wrath. All nations would say, why has Yahweh done so to this land? What does the heat of this great anger mean? Then people would say, because they have forsaken the covenants of Yahweh Elohim. He brought them out of the land of Egypt, for they went and served other Elohims and worshipped them, and Elohim that they did not know and that he had not given to them. Then the anger of Yahweh was aroused against this land to bring on it every curse that is written in the book. And Yahweh uprooted them from their land in anger, in wrath, and in great indignation, and cast them into another land as it is today. So it's really interesting here that we see that the covenant is with salt. He says that all of your sacrifices are to be salted. That's the covenant of salt. And yet he overthrows them with salt. So there's your two types of salt right there. We read in Zephaniah 2:9, therefore as I live, says Yahweh of hosts, the Elohim of Yasharel, surely Moab shall be like Sodom, and the people of Ammon like Gomorrah, overrun with weeds and salt pit. Not overrun with weed as in cannabis, but weeds and a perpetual desolation. All right. Jeremiah or Yirmiyahu 17:6 says this, for he shall be like a shrub in the desert and shall not see when good comes, but shall inhabit the parched places of the wilderness in a salt land, which is not inhabited. Job 6:6. Now we're starting to change. So those are all negative examples. They are a sign of judgment where the land is no longer inhabitable. And that is by Yah's design, that he's so over it. He's like, you're not even going to live here anymore. So in Job 6:6, it says this, Can flavorless food be eaten without salt? Or is there any taste in the white of an egg? So, um, yeah, I mean, you could use that example right there with Yahushua HaMashiach, right? With the saltiness that we're supposed to have. Do you want to be bland food or salty food? Second Chronicles 13:5. Should you not know that Yahuwah Elohim of Yasharel gave the dominion over Yasharel to David forever, to him and his sons by a covenant of salt? Now that's exciting right there. So the covenant of salt was made with David after the rejection of Shaul or Saul. And the promise was that a man would come through David that would have this covenant of salt. So we move forward to Ezekiel 16:3. Again, the word of Yahuwah came to me, saying, Son of Adam, cause Yerushalayim to know her abominations, and say, Thus says Yahuwah Elohim to Yerushalayim, your birth and your nativity are from the land of Canaan. Your father was an Amorite, and your mother a Hittite. As for your nativity, on the day you were born, your navel cord was not cut, nor were you washed in water to cleanse you. You were not rubbed with salt, nor wrapped in swaddling clothes. So the three words I want you to pay attention there to is nativity, salt, and I guess swaddling clothes is two words, making four, but nativity, salt, and swaddling clothes. All right, so we're going to jump forward now to Luke. The promise was given that through David was going to be a king forever, a covenant of salt. And we see this in Luke. And she brought forth, this is, of course, Miriam, the mother of Yahusha. She brought forth her firstborn son and wrapped him in swaddling clothes and laid him in a manger because there was no room for them in the inn. And that's verse 7 of chapter 2. Well, you skip a few verses there to verse 12, and it says, And this will be the sign to you. You will find a babe wrapped in swaddling clothes lying in a manger. And the idea is when there's a lot of emphasis on these swaddling clothes. The angels really wanted the shepherds to know he was in swaddling clothes. And so, yeah, that's kind of interesting, right? So it seems like he's referring back to this idea in Ezekiel of the salt covenant. And what the Yahudim did apparently is that when the babies were born, they would rub them with salt. And it doesn't explicitly say that in the Gospel of Luke, but he seems to be referring back to Ezekiel, where it says they weren't wrapped in swaddling clothes, they weren't salted at their nativity, whereas Yahusha was wrapped in swaddling clothes at his nativity and part of the salt covenant. We could connect that with 2 Chronicles 13:5. Now, in Mattathiyahu 5:13, Yahusha says, "You are the salt of the earth," right? So that should give us more context now. He's not just giving some sort of fun little metaphor. He's like talking about the salt covenant. They knew, like, oh yeah, we are the salt covenant. We're salted. You are the salt of the earth. You are the covenant of the salt. But if the salt loses its flavor, how shall it be made salty again? It is then good for nothing but to be thrown out and trampled underfoot by men, which of course happened in 70 AD. They were trampled underfoot. The salt covenant was no good. It lost its flavor. Colossians 4:6. Let your speech always be with grace, seasoned with salt, that you may know how you ought to answer each one. Now we get into this idea of salted with fire. You remember, there's the alchemical end of it, right? The water and the sun, right? And the fire usually is with judgment. Of course, with Sodom and Gomorrah, right? The fire rains down. For everyone will be salted with fire. That's interesting. And every sacrifice will be seasoned with salt. And we're to be living sacrifices. So everyone is going to pass through the fire. Whether you like it or not, you're going to be salted in the fire. Salt is good, but if the salt loses its flavor, how will you season it? Have salt in yourselves and have peace with one another. Now, think about that word peace or shalom, because we're going to be ending tonight talking about the shalom sacrifice. And so he says right here, he's talking about You have to be a living sacrifice of salt, of fire salt, and that it's to be a shalom sacrifice. All right. So don't forget that before we get to the end. 1 Peter 4:12-14. Beloved, do not think it strange concerning the fiery trial, which is to try you, as though some strange thing happened to you, but rejoice to the extent that you partake of Mashiach's sufferings, that when his glory is revealed, you may also be glad with exceeding joy. If you are reproached for the name of Mashiach, blessed are you, for the Ruach of glory and of Allahayam rest upon you. On their part, he is blasphemed, but on your part, he is glorified. Remember that when you are judged or persecuted for speaking his name, Yahushua HaMashiach, or Yahuwah, and others revile you for it, that you are actually blessed. 1 Corinthians 3:14-16. If anyone's work which he has built on it endures, he will receive a reward. If anyone's work is burned, he will suffer loss, but he himself will be saved, so as through fire. So there's that salting again. And again, I'm just telling you now, the fire, I believe, is the Ruach HaKodesh. So there's different types of fires, but I think this is the fire of the Ruach HaKodesh. Do you not know that you are the temple of Allah Hayam, and that the Ruach of Allah Hayam dwells in you? See, that it kind of answers it right there, right? So there's the fire coming down from heaven, the fire baptism, the Ruach HaKodesh into the temple. Revelation 27-9. Now, I read this chapter so much, but it's funny how much of the Bible is actually explained through this chapter. Now, when the 1,000 years have expired, Satan will be released from his prison and will go out to deceive the nations, which are in the four corners of the earth, Gog and Magog, to gather them together to battle, whose number is as the sand of the sea. They went up on the breadth of the earth and surrounded the camp of the saints in the beloved city, and fire came down from Allahayam out of heaven and devoured them. So that there you see another Sodom and Gomorrah incident. It's going to be like a salt event, the fire salt coming down and just pulverizing everybody in judgment. And then Yahuwah rained brimstone and fire on Sodom and Gomorrah from Yahuwah out of the heavens. So there you see a connection in Genesis. It begins where it ends, or you can know the begin or the end from the beginning. Genesis and Revelation, the fire comes down from heaven, devours Sodom and Gomorrah, sign of the judgment to come. All right, so let's get into this. Leviticus 6 through chapter 8. Reading from the Paleo Hebrew. Hope you guys are enjoying this. And Yahuwah, the ever-living, set words in order towards Al-Mashahat to declare, if a Nefash sin and act treacherously by acting covertly against Yahuwah, and should make deception against his neighbor regarding anything stored or perhaps a deposit, or perhaps a violent robbery, or has acted unjustly or violently by oppressing or defrauding his neighbor, or perhaps he has found something lost and has been deceptive concerning it, and has sworn an oath over it fraudulently, over anything from all which he has fashioned, the Adam having sinned in these, then if he, having existed, sinning, and as having failed in his duty, then he shall return the plunder which he took by violence, or perhaps the unjust gain which he has acquired through extortion, or perhaps the deposit which was committed unto him, or perhaps the lost thing which he acquired, or perhaps from all which he has sworn an oath over, with lying words, then having returned him his principal, and he shall increase over him the fifth part, and for which he shall give to him in the day of his guilt offering. And his guilt offering he shall bring into Yahuwah the ever-living a ram, perfect, whole, sound, from out of the flock, with your assessment for a guilt offering unto the priest. And the priest shall cover over him to the face of Yahuwah the ever-living, and pardon shall be for him over anything from all which has fashioned through guilt in her. Now, this is what I was talking about when the intentional versus unintentional sin. I said last week I'd get to it. This is it. This could be the one exception to intentional sin that we see that there is a sacrifice and restoration over. Now, if you do commentary on this, if you look at the commentary on Leviticus 6, chapter 6, the first several verses here, you're going to find a lot of people out there that say, no, it's still a unintentional sin. They will argue, to the end that it's unintentional. I don't really know. But again, that appears to be the only one, if there is. There's no other offerings of forgiveness for intentional sins. Now, I don't want to leave anyone in despair when I say that. So now I need to follow that thought through. I did last week. I'll make sure to talk about this again. Now, we just covered that in Leviticus 6. Numbers 15, 30 through 31 says, but the person who does anything defiantly, right? You transgress the Torah on any point defiantly. You eat that piece of, that you eat that pork. You don't keep the Sabbath. You lie. You steal. Whatever. In your head, you commit adultery. Whatever you do, whether he is native or an alien. All right. So this isn't just Yasharel. This is anybody. That one is blaspheming Yahuwah, and that person shall be cut off from among his people, because he has despised the word of Yahuwah and has broken his commandment. That person shall be completely cut off. His guilt will be on him. Now, I'm going to be talking about the unforgivable sin tonight, blaspheming the Ruach HaKodesh. Here we see another connection, blaspheming Yahuwah. And it's interesting that it says that that person had despised the word of Yahuwah. That person is in contempt of court, right? That's what it's describing. The blaspheming, you show up in court, you're in contempt of court. Like you're just contemptual. You have disgust towards the judge. You have disgust towards the law, the system. You feel that, this is injustice on you, that you are right. Everyone else is wrong. You're surrounded by idiots, right? It's contempt of court. A lot of people go around on the internet and they enter ministries and other things with this kind of attitude. And then they always play the victim card, like they're the ones being persecuted. So here we see another discussion on intentional sin in the New Testament. This comes from 1 John or Yochanan Rishon, chapter 5. I'm just going to read this little highlighted portion here. I covered this last week. If any man see his brother sin a sin which is not unto death, he shall ask, and he shall give him life for them that sin not unto death. There is a sin unto death. I do not say that he shall pray for it. All unrighteousness is sin, and there is a sin not unto death. But he says there is a sin unto death. When was the last time you heard a pastor preach on that? He might be talking about the intentional sin, or he could be talking about the blaspheming of the Ruach HaKodesh, the blaspheming of Yahuwah. Since I did cover this last week, I'm not going to get all of this. This basically says the person who sins will die. Okay. Everyone has to go to Sheol. Everyone dies. Proof that everyone is a sinner is that they die. But here's the atonement. And it says, for upon this day, the day of atonement, the holiest day of the year, he shall make a covering atonement over you to purify you from all your sins to the face of Yahuwah. This is talking about the high priest. The high priest goes in, sprinkles the blood on the mercy seat, the Ark of the Covenant, and the Holy of Holies. And on this day alone, all sins. I mean, you look at rabbinical commentary on this, and they all agree. They're like, yeah, it seems like there isn't forgiveness of your sins except for this one. This is it. This is why it's the most holy day. And this is why I say over and over and over again, when Christianity advertised that Jesus Christ is something new, and it's like, no, he's still under the Torah. Like if you do it with the Torah, you have some issues, because now the very legal system that he is using to cover your sins, you're saying it no longer exists, which means that this atonement no longer exists. You can't have it both ways. You can't say the atonement is done away with, but you're still covered by the atonement. It's one of those things that, like, this is like the utmost cognitive dissonance that you try to explain this to people. No, you cannot do away with the legal system. All right. Point being is that nothing has changed, because if I were to be alive before Mashiach showed up as my high priest, as a sinner who has made conscious transgressions, purposeful transgressions against the Torah, I would have to look to my high priest and have the faith. There it is, the belief, the faith that my sins are covered and I'm forgiven because of that sacrifice. All right. Now, of course, Yahushua HaMashiach is my high priest, and he has done that for me. I have faith and belief that he does it. That doesn't mean that I go out and just keep sinning, right? Of course, okay. So I went over this all last week, and for lack of time, I'm just going to skip all that. I think I made the case. All right, let's get back into the Torah portions. Oh no, let's talk about the unpardonable sin. Blaspheming the Ruach HaKodesh. Here we go. Then a demon-possessed man who was blind and mute was brought to Yahusha, and he healed the man so that he could speak and see. The crowds were astounded and asked, could this be the son of David? Remember the covenant of salt, right? Through David. But when the Parashim heard this, they said, only by Beelzebub, the prince of demons, does this man drive out demons. Knowing their thoughts, Yahusha said to them, every kingdom divided against itself will be laid waste, and every city or household divided against itself will not stand. If Satan drives out Satan, he is divided against himself. How then can his kingdom stand? And if I drive out demons by Beelzebub, by whom do your sons drive them out? So then they will be your judges. But if I drive out demons by the Ruach of Allah Hayam, then the kingdom of Allah Hayam has come upon you. Or again, how can anyone enter a strong man's house and steal his possessions? Unless he first ties up the strong man, then he can plunder his house. He who is not with me is against me, and he who does not gather with me scatters. Therefore I tell you, every sin and blasphemy will be forgiven men, but the blasphemy against the Ruach will not be forgiven. Whoever speaks a word against the son of Adam will be forgiven, but whoever speaks against the Ruach HaKodesh will not be forgiven, either in this age or in the one to come. But the person who does anything defiantly, whether he is native or an alien, that one is blaspheming Yahuwah. Wow, we just read that in Numbers, didn't we? And that person shall be cut off from among his people, because he has despised the word of Yahuwah and has broken his commandment. That person shall be completely cut off. His guilt will be on him. Now, this is interesting because I talk about this a lot, because a lot of the people who listen to me, they go off and listen to these other channels, and this growing movement that, they say that Yah is Satan. And that's straight up the blasphemy, guys. That's it. Like the blasphemy against Yahushua HaMashiach, or the blasphemy of the Ruach HaKodesh, was saying that Yahushua HaMashiach was not Mashiach, that the Mashiach had not come. This is the Antichrist spirit that was in Judaism at that time. The Hebrew faith that became Judaism, is they were saying Mashiach hasn't come, and John says that is the spirit of Antichrist. Well, it's the same thing. He attributes the same blasphemy of the Ruach HaKodesh to Yahuwah, and I think he's pointing out that he is Yahuwah. So the people are saying that Yahuwah is Satan. They're committing the same blasphemy, the same Antichrist spirit. It's awful, and people fall for this. So Mark there, that's just another reference to it. But for lack of time, I'm just going to skip right over that. Now, the issue they were having was that he was able to forgive sins. Now, this is why I'm talking about this, because you're not supposed to be able to forgive sins. I mean, you can't. Like they're sins that can only be done by the high priest. All right, they'll only be done by the high priest at the Day of Atonement. So if Yahushua HaMashiach is not our high priest, he had no right to go and forgive these sins, according to the Torah, according to the law. Of course, he's the Melchizedek priest, right? So he got into a boat, crossed over, and came to his own city. Behold, they brought to him a paralytic lying on a bed. When Yahushua saw their faith, he said to the paralytic, son, be of good cheer. Your sins are forgiven you. And at once some of the scribes said within themselves, this man blasphemes, right? So they think he's committing the blasphemy against Yahuwah talked about in Numbers. They're claiming that, he's working for Satan at this point. We see the same thing with Miriam of Migdal. You guys know I love talking about Miriam of Migdal. I'm actually preparing to write another paper on her this week that I think some of you are going to really dig. This comes from Bezor Lucas. Then one of the Parashim asked him to eat with him, and he went to the Pharisee's house. We know, according to the other Gospels, this is Simon the leper. And as I pointed out, Simon the leper happens to be Miriam of Migdal's daddy. That's her dad. And he, of course, he's a Pharisee. Also, to point out, there's another text I want to show you. It was one of those jaw-dropping moments, and it made total sense. That Simon the leper, guys, this Pharisee, he owns the Garden of Gethsemane. That was his garden. This was a wealthy man. He lived on the top of the Mount of Olives. That was his garden. It was the very garden that Yahushua HaMashiach went to pray in regularly. It's the one he camped in. Think about that. And think about that relationship with Miriam of Migdal. At this point, Simon the leper, he had tossed out Miriam of Migdal. She was dead to him. He had given up all authority with her, so he could condemn her all he wants, but now she was out on her own. She no longer had to protect her. She was free to make her own vows because he had released her. She wasn't allowed in the room. This is why when Yahushua showed up to to resurrect Lazarus, Martha was there, and he's like, "Where's Mary? Where's Miriam?" She wasn't there. She was weeping so much. She wasn't allowed to be there. She was dead to them. So he went to the Pharisee's house and sat down to eat. And behold, a woman in the city who was a sinner, when she knew that Yahushua sat at the table in the Pharisee's house, brought an alabaster flask of fragrant oil and stood at his feet behind him weeping. And she began to wash his feet with her tears and wiped them with the hair of her head. And she kissed his feet and anointed them with the fragrant oil. Now, when the Pharisee who had invited him saw this, is the father, he spoke to himself, saying, "This man, if he were a prophet, would know who and what manner of woman this is who is touching him, for she's a sinner." He's protesting his daughter, right? He's like, "How, you're not supposed to do this. I have already kicked her out of the family. How dare you let her do this?" All right, but he forgave her. He forgave her for sin. Whatever the sin was it, I think it was breaking off the marriage through adultery, and he forgave her for that. I'll be talking more about that in the paper I'm going to write this week. I think you guys can really dig it. Well, here we get the forgiving the thief on the cross. One of the criminals who hung there heaped abuse on him. "Are you not the Mashiach?" he said. "Save yourself and us." But the other one rebuked him, the other thief, saying, "Do you not even fear Allah Hayam? Since you are under the same judgment, we are punished justly, for we are receiving what our actions deserve." So this thief, he gets it. Like, in terms of the Torah, there is no forgiveness for this in terms of sacrifice, right? There is, like, it's death. Whatever they did, it deserved death, to be cut off from the community. He gets that. He's repentant of it. But this man has done nothing wrong. Then he says, "Yahushua, remember me when you come into your kingdom." And Yahushua said to him, "Truly I tell you today, you will be with me in paradise." There's the war of the comma right there. Now here's a quote from the Arabic Bezorah of the Arabic Gospel, the infancy of the Savior. I'm not going to quote from that, but it talks about when he was young, a child, he crossed paths with Beavis and Butthead, the two thieves. I've quoted from this enough. I don't need to quote from it again. 1 John chapter 2, where he talks about the Antichrist, the anti-Mashiach, is he who denies the Father and the Son. And this is just adding up to the unforgivable sin. Blasphemy, Yahweh, we already covered that in Numbers. Okay, let's just skip that. It was more wisdom talk. I always get excited talking about the Ruach HaKodesh, but lack of time. Well, let's talk about this. This is in the 10 Commandments. Honor your father and mother so that your days may be long in the land that Yahuwah, your Elohim, is giving you. Okay, so we see the blasphemy of the Ruach HaKodesh, which is, of course, the mother. Actually, let's read this here. No, this is two good quotes. I've never read this before. This comes from the Sophia or the Wisdom of Yehusha bar Sirach. So this is the son of Sirach and Yehusha. This is not the same Yehusha HaMashiach. This is what it says. To fear Yahuwah is the beginning of wisdom. All right. So if we're connecting wisdom with the Ruach HaKodesh, to be in contempt of court is not to fear Yahuwah. Therefore, you don't have wisdom. You are in contempt of the Ruach HaKodesh and Yahuwah. She is created with the faithful in the womb. There's your salt. She made among men an eternal foundation, and among their descendants she will be trusted. For to fear Yahuwah is wisdom's full measure. She satisfies men with her fruits. She, of course, remember, fruit only comes through the ladies in nature. It doesn't come through the dudes. She fills their whole house with desirable goods, and their storehouses with her produce. The fear of Yahuwah is the crown of wisdom, making peace and perfect health to flourish. So if you don't want to have shalom, and there's also the sacrifice of shalom. If you don't want shalom and perfect health, then go ahead and be in contempt of court. Go ahead and do it. See where it gets you. He saw her and apportioned her. He rained down knowledge and discerning comprehension, and he exalted the glory of those who held her fast. To fear Yahuwah is the roots of wisdom, and her branches are long life. That comes from the Sophia of Yehusha bar Sirach, chapter 1. Here's another reference from chapter 2. Those who fear Yahuwah will not disobey his words. And those who, so that's a test right there of the people who say they fear Yah. There's a test right there. Do you obey or disobey his words? And here's the love test. And those who love him will keep his ways. Well, isn't that interesting? Because Yochanan says the same thing. Those who fear Yahuwah will seek his approval. And those who love him will be filled with the Torah. Sophia of Yehusha bar Sirach. One more reference from Sophia. Whoever forsakes his father is like a blasphemer, and whoever angers his mother is cursed by Yahuwah. So there you have it right there. Father, mother, blaspheming, and the mother is the curse right there, right? Like, Yehusha says, like, look, you mess with me, okay, I can forgive that. But you mess with my mother, it's over. I read that in Exodus. All right. This comes from Ephesians 6:1-4. Children, obey your parents in Yahuwah, for this is right. Honor your father and mother, which is the first commandment with a promise, that it may go well with you and that you may have a long life on the earth. Fathers, do not provoke your children to wrath, instead bring them up in the discipline and instruction of Yahuwah. Colossians 3, children, obey your parents in everything, for this is pleasing to Yahuwah. Fathers, do not provoke your children, so they will not become discouraged. Oh, here's a fun one for the Didache. I like to quote from this whenever I can. And every prophet that speaks in the Ruach, you shall neither try nor judge, for every sin shall be forgiven, but this sin shall not be forgiven. So here we see another of the sin that is not forgiven. But not everyone that speaks in the Ruach is a prophet, but only if he holds the ways of Yahuwah. That's how we know that this is the Deuteronomy 13 test. Therefore, from their ways shall the false prophet and the prophet be known. And every prophet who orders a meal in the Ruach eats not from it, except indeed he be a false prophet. And every prophet who teaches the truth, if he do not what he teaches, is a false prophet. And every prophet proved true, working into the mystery of the church in the world, yet not teaching others to do what he himself does, shall not be judged among you. For with Allahayam he has his judgment, for so did also the ancient prophets. So basically, if he is holding to the ways of Yahuwah, we know that's the Torah, then he is a true prophet. And if he is doing it and teaching others to do the same, that's how we know. And so if we that's kind of a line there with those who are not to be forgiven. So if a true prophet comes along and you don't listen to him and do what he says, well, that's what it says right there. And I'll just leave that there. I think I have more to say on this. We'll have to wait till later tonight because I ran out of scripture verses. I had a really intelligent thought, but now I'm live on camera, so I guess I got to keep reading here until it returns to me. Returning to our Torah portion, I think what's going to happen is I'm going to read through the whole thing now. I don't think I'm going to break again. So strap down and get ready. Here we go. Then Yahuwah, the ever-living, set words in order towards Al-Mashahah to declare, command Aaron and his sons to declare, this is the Torah of the ascending offering. It is an ascending over a heap of fuel all night until daybreak. And the fire of the altar shall burn in it. Quick explanation. Just last week, we saw that the men of Israel, of Yasharel, I should say the people of Yasharel, were instructed to come forward, approach Yahuwah, and put their hands on the animal as it's being sacrificed in the presence of the priest and Yahuwah. So now the instructions are, okay, that's done. Everyone's gone home. This is after hours. How are we, this is instruction for the priest. And the question I want all of you to be asking is that if you're not a Levite priest, does this affect you? Now, I have stated in the past that, all 613, they don't apply to each of us because I'll say I'm not a Levite priest. Well, it's true, I'm not a Levite priest, but I'm actually a Melchizedek priest. And we're all called into the priesthood. And so the question is does this affect us, right? Are we to follow these commands? Think about it as we go along. It is an ascending over a heap of fuel all night long. Reminds me of Lionel Richie. All night until daybreak. I'm not going to start singing in front of you guys, don't worry. Even though right now in my head I'm singing it. And the fire of the altar shall burn in it, and the priest shall clothe himself with his white linen garments, and with his white linen breeches he shall put on his flesh. And he shall lift up the ashes which the fire has produced, and the ascending upon the altar, and he shall place him near the altar. Then he shall put off his garments, and he shall clothe himself with other garments, and he shall carry forth the ashes towards the outside of the encampment, toward a clean place, and the fire over the altar shall burn upon him. She shall not be quenched, but the priest shall burn over her wood daybreak after daybreak, and shall arrange the ascending offering in order upon her. Now, isn't that interesting here that Pamela put in the translation? The King James over here says it, but Pamela puts her. She gives a feminine to the fire. I think that's a Ruach HaKodesh connection. Remember the fire from heaven. And he shall offer odors upon her with the fats of the shalom offerings. The fire shall burn perpetually upon the altar. Never shall she go out. Remember this. Never. The fire is never to go out. Never shall she go out. Not it. The Torah of the gift offering. And this is the Torah of the gift offering. The sons of Aaron shall bring near her to the face of Yahuwah, the ever-living, toward the face of the altar, and shall take a portion from him, his handful from the flour or meal, and from the oil and the frankincense which is upon the gift offering, and he shall burn his incense upon the altar as a sweet scent, a memorial unto Yahuwah. And what remains from her, Aaron and his son shall eat with matzah, or matzawath. It shall be eaten in the Kudash place. In the enclosure of the tents of meeting shall they eat her. She shall not be heated with chamatz for their portion. I have gifted her from my fire offerings. It is most set apart. Like the sin offering and the guilt offering, all males among the sons of Aaron shall eat of her. A chak, let's see what the chak is, a statute to time of long duration through the circuit of your generations from the fire offerings. All that touches upon them shall be kudash. And of course, kudash means holy, right? And Yahuwah, the ever-living, set words in order towards Al-Mashahah to declare, this gift offering shall Aaron and his sons bring near unto Yahuwah in the time period when he is anointed, the 10th of the afaha, a fine flour. I think she put that's a portion of time. Let me just look at that. Yeah, a unit of dry measurement. Okay. of fine flour or meal for a gift offering perpetually, half of her in daybreak and half of her in the dusk. And the anointed priest below him and his son shall fashion her a chak for time of long duration unto Yahuwah, the ever-living. It is completely burned as incense, and all gift offerings of a priest are completely burned. She shall exist, not eaten. And this is, of course, important in these instructions to make sure you got to keep the fire burning for a lot of reasons, but to make sure that the sacrifice completely burns through. And think about this, guys. Actually, no, I don't want to give too much away yet. I'm sorry. Forgive me. I'm going to keep reading. And Yahuwah, the ever-living, set words in order toward Al-Mashahah to declare, set words in order toward Al-Aaron and toward his sons to declare, this is the Urath of the sin offering. This here is actually, I think, Torah plural, a plural form of Torah. Did I read? Yeah. So the plural form of Torah, this still throws me off. This is the Urath of the sin offering. In the place where the ascending offering is slaughtered, you shall slaughter the sin offering to the face of Yahuwah the ever-living. It is most set apart. The priest that offers her shall eat of her. In the Kudash shall she be eaten. In the enclosure of the tent of meeting, all which touches upon the flesh of her shall be set apart, and that which is sprinkled from her blood upon any garment which is sprinkled from her, you shall wash in the Kudash place, the holy place. And all vessels of earthenware in which it is ripened with heat on him shall be broken into pieces. And conditionally, if it should be cooked in a copper pot, then it shall be scoured and rinsed in water. All males from among the priests shall eat her. It is most set apart. And all sin offerings of which he shall bring near a portion from her blood in toward the tent of meeting to make a covering in the Kudash, none of it shall be eaten. She shall be burned in fire. The Torah of the guilt offering. Hold on, guys. I need another quick drink of coffee here. Doesn't that sound amazing when you pour it? I'm getting a little parched here, a little thirsty. All this fire talk, this barbecue talk. And this is the Urath of the guilt offering. It is most set apart. In the place at which they slaughter the ascending, he shall slaughter the guilt offering, and his blood he shall sprinkled upon the altar in a circuit round about. And all his best, choicest fat from him he shall bring near, the thick fat tail and the best, choicest fat which covers the interior, and the 2 kidneys, and the best, choicest fat which is upon them, which is by the loins. And he shall turn aside the heavy redundance upon the liver. This verse right here, I'm going to be dissecting later on. We're going to look at that more esoterically. It's going to be a lot of fun. Do a little class project. And the priest shall burn them as incense upon the altar as an offering by fire unto Yahuwah, the ever-living. It is a guilt offering. Any male among the priests shall eat him. In the Kudash place he shall eat. It is most set apart. Like the sin offering, like the guilt offering, there is one Torah for them. The priest that makes a covering with him, he shall exist for him. And the priest who brings near any man's ascending offering, the skin of the ascending offering which he has brought near shall exist to the priest. And every gift offering baked in the oven, and everything made in a pot, and upon the griddle, it shall exist to the priest which brought near her. But all the gift offerings mixed with oil and dry shall belong to all the sons of Aaron, each man like his brother. The Torah of the Shalom offering. And this is the Torah of the Shalom offering, which he shall bring near unto Yahuwah the ever-living. Conditionally, should he bring near a gift offering, then he shall bring near with his sacrifice of Thu'uadaha. Let me just look at that again. Is that, confession of thanksgiving. And I'll be, again, talking about the Shalom and Thanksgiving offering. That's what we're going to close on tonight. He will bring the Thanksgiving unfermented cakes mingled with oil, and unfermented wafers anointed with oil, and fine flour or meal cakes dipped in oil. Over the perforated cakes is fermented bread. He shall bring near his sacrifice of thanksgiving. It is his offering of shalom. And he shall bring near a portion from him from the whole of the gift offering unto Yahuwah the ever-living. The priest that sprinkles the blood of the sacrifice of the gift, this will exist for him. And he shall eat the flesh of the sacrifice for the thanksgiving of his shalom in the day he is brought near. He shall not leave any portion of him until daybreak. Conditionally, should anything be vowed, or rather should be spontaneous, offering be sacrificed in the day he brings near sacrifice, he may be eaten, and the day after, the remaining portion may be eaten. But the remainder of the flesh upon the third day he shall burn with fire. I wish I had put more deep thought into that. That really had me when I was studying it this week about the third day. And I was like, I made a mental note of it and I never came back. So maybe next week I'll have something more on that. And conditionally, if eating, he shall eat from the flesh of the sacrifice of his shalom offering upon the third day. He shall not be graciously accepted, neither shall he bring him near to be reckoned unto him. He shall exist as an abomination, and the nephash that eats any portion of him shall bear his depravity. And the flesh which touches upon any uncleanness, it shall not be eaten. He shall burn it in fire. Any pure one, he shall eat its flesh. And if the nephash touches upon anything unclean, upon the uncleanness of Adam, or perhaps upon unclean beast, or perhaps upon any unclean person, and shall eat from the sacrifice of the shalom offerings, which are unto Yahuwah the ever-living, then even that nephash shall be cut off from her people. Sounds pretty serious. And Yahuwah the ever-living, you can almost see that. You can almost see like the contempt of court, right? Like if you were, I mean, you're that contemptuous and you're just like, yeah, I'm eating this anyways, like screw the system. Like you're going to get cut off. Blasphemy of you could see blasphemy of the spirit working out in a lot of different ways. And Yahuwah the ever-living set forth words in order towards Al-Mashahad to declare, set words in order towards the sons of Yasharel to declare, all the best, choicest fat of cattle, and of sheep, and of goats you shall not eat. And the best, choicest fat of a carcass, and the best, choicest fat of that which has been torn by beasts may be fashioned for any prescribed work of service. But eating, you shall not eat it. For all who eat the best, choicest fat from part of a beast, which has been brought near from any part of fire, offering unto Yahuwah the ever-living, then shall the nephash that eats her shall be cut off from his people. And you shall not consume any blood in any of your places of habitation, whether of winged fowl or of beast. Any nephash that consumes any blood, then she will cut off that nephash from among her people. And Yahuwah the ever-living set forth words in order toward Al-Mashahad to declare, set words in order toward the sons of Yasharel to declare, from bringing near the sacrifice of his shalom unto Yahuwah the ever-living, he shall bring his gift unto Yahuwah from the sacrifice of his shalom. His hand shall bring near the fire offerings unto Yahuwah the ever-living, the best, choicest fat upon the breast. He shall bring it with the breast for waving him, as a wave offering to the face of Yahuwah. And the priest shall burn as incense the best, choicest fat upon the altar, and the breast shall exist for Aaron and his sons. And the right leg you shall give as a heave offering unto the priest from the sacrifices of your shalom. And the one from the sons of Aaron who is bringing near the blood of the shalom offering, and the best, choicest fat, the leg will exist to him as his portion. For the breast of the waving and the leg of the heave offering I have taken from the sons of Yasharel, from the sacrifices of the shalom, and I have gifted them to Aaron the priest and to his sons for a chalk for a time of long duration from the sons of Yasharel. This is the consecrated portion for Aaron and the consecrated portion of his sons from the fire offerings which Yahuwah in the day he brings near them to the priest of Yahuwah, which Yahuwah has established to give to them in the day of his anointing, them from the sons of Yasharel, as a chalk for a time of long duration throughout the circuit of the generations. This is the Torah of the ascending offerings, and for the gift offerings, and for the guilt offerings, and for the inaugurations, and for the sacrifice of their shalom offerings, which Yahuwah has established with Mashah on Mount Sinai, or she puts her Sayanuya, Mount Sayanuya. In the day of his establishing the sons of Yasharel to bring near their offerings unto Yahuwah the ever-living in the wilderness of Sayanuya. Chapter 8. And Yahuwah the ever-living set words in order toward Al-Mashahad to declare, take Aaron and his sons with him, and the garments, and the anointing oil, and a young bullock of the sin offerings, and 2 rams, and the basket of unfermented, and all the congregation shall assemble until the entrance of the tent of meeting. I'm trying to imagine here, like all the congregation trying to meet at the entrance of the tent of meeting. I mean, wasn't the camp already surrounding it? So I don't know how congested or packed it had to be. Imagine the traffic getting home that night. And Meshachah shall fashion like that which Yahweh the ever-living has established with him. And the congregation shall assemble toward the entrance of the tent of meeting. And Meshachah declared toward the gathered, this is the bar which Yahweh the ever-living has established to be fashioned. And Meshachah brought near Aaron and his sons, and he washed them in water, and he gifted upon him the tunic, and he girded him with the belt, and he clothed him with the upper robe, and he placed over him the ephod, and he girded him with the variegated girdle of the ephod, and placed it upon him, and he placed upon him the ornamented breastplate, and he did gift upon the ornamented breastplate the lights and the perfections, and he placed the turban upon his head, and he placed upon the turban toward his face the golden set apart Nazar, like that which Yahweh the ever-living had established with Meshachah. Meshachah took the anointed oil and the anointed the Mashichan dwelling place and all that which is in him, and he set them apart, and he sprinkled from it upon the altar 7 strokes of the anvil, and he anointed the altar and all his implements and the basin and his pedestal to set them apart. And he poured out from the anointing oil over the head of Aaron and anointed him to set him apart. And Meshachah brought near Aaron's sons, and he clothed upon them tunics and girded them with girdles and bound for them turbans, as Yahweh the ever-living established with Meshachah. And he brought near the young bullock for the sin offering, and he supported Aaron and his sons, their hands over the head of the young bullock for the sin offering. And he slaughtered, and Meshachah took the blood and gifted upon the horns of the altar in a circuit round about with his forefinger, and he purified the altar. And the blood he poured out toward the base of the altar, and he set it apart to make a covering upon it. And he took all the best, choicest fat upon the interior, and redundance above the liver, and the 2 kidneys, and the best, choicest fat. And Meshachah burned as incense upon the altar. And the young bullock, and his skin, and his flesh, and his excrement he had burned with fire. That sounds lovely thought, to burn the excrement. And burned with fire outside of the encampment, like that which Yahweh the ever-living had established with Meshachah. It's good to know that was burned on the outside of the encampment. And he brought near the ram for the ascending, and Aaron and his sons supported their hands upon the head of the ram. And Meshachah slaughtered and scattered the blood in a circuit round about upon the altar. And the ram he cut into pieces, and Meshachah burnt incense with the head and the pieces of flesh and the fat. And the interior and the legs he washed in water, and Meshachah burned as incense. The whole ram as an ascending offering is for a sweet scent, a fire offering like that which Yahweh the ever-living had established with Meshachah. And he brought near the second ram of the inauguration, and Aaron and his son supported their hands upon the head of the ram. And Meshachah slaughtered, and he took from his blood, and he gifted upon the tip of Aaron's right ear, and upon the thumb of his right hand, and upon the great toe of his right foot. And he brought near Aaron's sons, and Meshachah gifted a portion of the blood upon the tip of the right ear, and upon the right thumbs, and upon the great toes of the right foot. That's something else we'll have to wait till next year for me to talk about the great toe that they put the blood on. That's something I wanted to look into this week. And, it's just like, I feel like I just miss out on so much on these portions trying to cover all this stuff. There's so much stuff. And Meshachah scattered the blood in a circuit round about the altar, and he took the best, choicest fat and the thick, fat tail, and the best, choicest fat upon the interior, and the redundant lobe of the liver, and from the basket of the matzawath, which was to the face of Yahweh the ever-living, he took challah and 1 unfermented bread, and 1 challah bread, oiled, and 1 thin wafer, and he placed upon the best, choicest fat, and upon the right leg, and he gifted the whole upon Aaron's hands and upon his son's hands, and waved them for a wave offering to the face of Yahweh the ever-living. And Meshachah took them from over their hands, and he burned them upon the altar of the ascending. They are inaugurations for a sweet scent. It is a fire offering unto Yahweh the ever-living. And Meshachah took the breast, and he waved him as a waving to the face of Yahweh from the ram. He existed for a portion as Yahweh the ever-living had established with Meshachah. Meshachah took from the anointing oil and a portion of the blood which was upon the altar, and he sprinkled it upon Aaron, upon his garments with him, and set apart Aaron, his garments, and his sons' garments with him. And Meshachah declared toward Aaron and toward his sons, cook the flesh at the entrance of the tent of meeting, and there you shall eat him with the bread which is in the wicker basket of the inauguration, like that which I was commanded to declare. Aaron and his sons shall eat him, and that which remains of the flesh and of the bread you shall burn him in fire. And from the entrance of the tent of meeting you shall not go forth for 7 days until the day of the completion of the days of your inauguration. For 7 days he shall fill your hand like that which he has fashioned on this day. Yahuwah the ever-living has established to make a covering over you. And at the entrance of the tent of meeting you shall remain days and night for 7 days. And you shall guard the observance of Yahuwah that you die not. For in this moment I was commanded. For in this manner I was commanded. And Aaron and his sons fashioned all the purpose plan which Yahuwah the ever-living established by the hand of Meshachah. And that concludes this week's reading. So I'm parched. Let me take another drink here. All right. So let's look at a quick overview of the Torah. Let's see where we're at. All right. So we read through Bereshit this year. That would be Genesis, and we see that as Yasharel's beginnings. We get to Shemawath, Exodus. We just finished that. That is the story of Yasharel's freedom from Mitzrayim. Leviticus is all about drawing near to Yahuwah and being holy. And that's the theme. I think probably every week I'll just be looking at different aspects of that. What is it to draw near to Yahuwah and be holy? Now, when we eventually get to Numbers, Numbers and Deuteronomy, I love those books. I put here, like, Numbers is basically like a camping trip gone wrong. You know, it starts out good. You got all your equipment, you're all planned, you got your destination, and it just goes downhill so quickly. And they end up wandering in the wilderness 40 years. Technically, it was 38 years because 2 years had already gone by. They were supposed to cross into the land. It didn't end that way. Turn out that way. And then, of course, Deuteronomy is all about looking forward into Yasharel's future. All right, so let's look at the idea of drawing near in holiness. And remember now, that's the theme of Leviticus, drawing near to Yahuwah and being holy. Last week, I showed you this example here. You guys know this by now, Exodus 19, 3-6. And unto me you shall be a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. I'm putting that there in case anybody is new coming in this week. That was the intent all along, that we were always to be priest, a kingdom of priests. And I believe that, I think he would have initiated the Melchizedek priesthood right there, right then and there. If that's what they wanted, because they weren't all Levite priests, right? I think he would have just been, okay, here's the kingdom of heaven. Boom, you got it. Melchizedek priest. They didn't want it. So it came at a later time. And then when that happened, they still didn't want it. All right. So we see in the holiness code here in Leviticus 19:2. We'll get there in a few weeks. It says, speak to all the congregation of the people of Yasharel and say to them, you shall be holy, for I, Yahuwah, your Elohim, am holy. So that's the whole theme of Leviticus right there. If we claim to be followers of our Elohim, then we need to be as he is. We can't just say that because he is holy, we are holy. It's like, no, he doesn't say that here. He says, you shall be holy. It's on you. You need to be holy. Kifa Rishon says, therefore prepare your minds for action, be sober-minded. Set your hope fully on the grace to be given you at the revelation of Yahushua HaMashiach. As obedient children, do not conform to the passions of your former ignorance. Right? There's the unconscious sin, the former ignorance. That is the unconscious sin that we all committed before we came to the truth, and now we are out of excuses. Ladies and gentlemen, we're out of excuses. All right. I pray that everyone here who is a part of these Torah portions are here because they're taking it serious. Like, you're making it worse for yourself if you're a part of these discussions and you learn the truth and then you decide you don't want to be a part of it. Like, if you're going to approach a holy Elohim, he's going to cut the fat out. If you're acting like a terror, if you're acting like a goat, you're not being obedient. You're not bending down. You're not bowing down. You're standing up like a terror. Can be cut out. But just as he who called you is holy, so be holy in all that you do. In everything be holy. For it is written, be holy because I am holy. And we just saw where it was written in Leviticus. Peter is referring to Leviticus. He's saying the heart of the Torah, the Levitical codes that everyone says is done away with, it's still applicable. Hebrews 12 says this: pursue peace with everyone. Okay, there's pursue shalom with everyone, the shalom Thanksgiving sacrifice. Pursue the sacrifice of shalom with everyone, as well as holiness, without which no one will see Yahuwah. All right? So if you are not a living sacrifice, the shalom Thanksgiving sacrifice, salted in the fire. You see how this all the cogwheels come together? You do not approach him in holiness because he is holy, then you will not see Yahuwah. See to it that no one falls short of the grace of Allah Hayam, and that no root of bitterness springs up to cause trouble and defile many. I'll touch on grace here real quickly, because I have to, because I get so many responses from people. I had this, okay. A few months ago, I'm sitting around the fire down in Florida on the beach, talking to a lovely couple, older gentleman, and I'm telling him about the commands and the Torah and how it's holy and righteous. And he was being so appalled. He was a Baptist guy, you know, and he just stood up, totally triggered one time. He said, "My Bible says grace. That's what my Bible says. It's grace. Nothing what you're talking about. It talks about grace." And I'm like, yeah, that word grace is in there, but it says don't fall short of grace. The idea is, we have a saying for this: fallen from grace. What does that mean exactly, to fall from grace? It means that if you're in the graces of Allah Hayam, you're actually being obedient to him. If you're being disobedient, you have fallen from grace. All right. So we do not want to fall short of the grace of Allah Hayam. Now that we are no longer ignorance, we're no longer in the former ignorance, right? And that no root of bitterness springs up to cause trouble and defile many. Well, what is the root of bitterness? It's contempt of court. Don't walk into that courtroom that's ever-present court, right? That we're being judged, that everything is being documented. Don't be in contempt of court. See to it that no one is sexually immoral or is godless like Esau, who for a single meal sold his birthright. For you know that afterward, when he wanted to inherit the blessing, he was rejected. He could find no guard for repentance, though he sought the blessing with tears. Wow, that's kind of sad to think about that, huh? It actually says that he sought for the blessing with tears, but he had no ground for repentance. He wasn't getting that back. That's really interesting to think about. Oh, I had to throw in the Didache again. The Didache 10. If anyone is holy, let him come. Boom, Leviticus. If anyone is holy, let him come. If anyone is not so, let him repent. All right, so here's the idea of one of the ways of drawing closer to Yahweh is by not judging or slandering. All right, so for all the holier than thou's going around on the internet out there, you know, and just judging. And I'll give you an example. I had a guy this week. He messages me demanding that I answer to him. And he said that if I don't answer him, it's going to be proof that I'm a Jesuit priest, which is kind of funny because we're talking about like the Melchizedek priesthood. Everyone is a priest, right? But I guess you're either a Jesuit priest or a Melchizedek priest. And it was about Paul. And he's saying that, if I disagreed with him on this, that Paul, he was coming from the position that Paul was false, that is proof that I'm a Jesuit priest. And I was just, I tried to work with this guy the best I could. And it finally came where it was total just ego in this, where he said, "Oh, I thought you sought the truth. This is proof that you don't seek the truth." And this is what he's talking about here in James and so many other places, where it's just like, guys, yeah. So when somebody disagrees with us, like, we don't need to be contemptuous with them, with their ministries. Like, nobody listening to me, I myself, and I can guarantee you, nobody listening to me and I myself, we are not the measuring rod of truth. Okay. I am not 100% true, and anyone who disagrees with me on any given point is in error. and then I could go to that person. Oh, I guess somebody here doesn't care about the truth, right? All right, so let's look at this. Submit yourselves then to Allah Hayam, resist the devil and he will flee from you. So how do we resist the devil? It's by draw near to Allah Hayam. There's that drawing near, Leviticus, book of Leviticus. Draw near to Allah Hayam and he will draw near to you. Interesting. So if he's not drawing near to you because you're not drawing near to him and you're with the devil and you can resist him all you want, but he's not going to flee from you if you're not near to Allah Hayam because you're unclean, living in your sin. Cleanse your hands, you sinners, and purify your hearts, you double-minded. Grieve, mourn, and weep. Turn your laughter to mourning and your joy to gloom. Humble yourselves before Yahweh and he will exalt you. Brothers, do not slander one another. So we're going to see here time and again, the idea of drawing near to Yahweh is not slandering others. Somehow this goes in one ear and right out the other with so many out there who are claiming to be Torah observant. And they are holier than thou. And they are so, they and Yah are like this. They're so tight. They're a living sacrifice. And you watch them go around total contemptuous towards these different ministries out there. Here's the thing, like there's a lot of Torah ministries out there, guys. I don't want to slander these people. I don't want to knock them down. These are people out there declaring truth. And just because I disagree with them on one subject or another, I'm not going to go like, oh, I thought they pursued the truth. I thought they're not. And it's like, come on. It's like we can agree to disagree on things and we could be, brothers in the faith here. Anyway, so brothers, do not slander one another. Anyone who speaks against his brother or judges him speaks against the Torah and judges the Torah. All right. This is speaking to all the Torah observant people out there. You are speaking against the Torah. You are judging it. And if you judge the Torah, you are not a practitioner of the Torah, but a judge of it. There is only one lawgiver and judge, the one who is able to save and destroy with the salt, right? Save and destroy with the salt. Amazing how all this stuff comes full circle. But who are you to judge your neighbor? Well, let's talk more about that. Who is the lawgiver, the judge? It's Yahushua HaMashiach. He's the lawgiver. He's the Torah giver, Yahuwah. This is a fun text here, the cloud of unknowing. I'll be presenting this to you very soon. I'm not saying that this is a scriptural text, but it is a fascinating text. Now, truly, I hope that on doomsday, it shall be fair when that Allah Hayam shall be seen clearly, and all his gifts. Then shall some that now be despised and set at little or not as common sinners, and peradventure some that now be horrible sinners. So that the people who, okay, let me finish this. Sit full seemly with saints in his sight. When some of those that seem now full holy and be worshipped of men as angels, the saints on the earth, and some of those yet peradventure that never yet sinned deadly shall sit full sorry among hell caves in hell mouth. Hereby may you see that no man should be judged of others here in this life for good nor for evil that they do. Nevertheless, deeds may lawfully be judged, but not the man, whether they be good or evil. So you can judge someone's fruit. Okay, we can judge someone's fruit. Go, that's rotten fruit. It's like somebody who says like, I don't judge. It's like, well, I don't want to be in a traffic circle with you if you can't tell the difference between a red light, a green light, or when you have the right of way, right? If you don't make any judgments in life, we can judge these things. But the man itself, that is for Yahweh personally to be judged. And I love how this says that like many of those, the billboard people who are esteemed, a lot of those people are not, they're fakers. They're not going to make it. And there's something about human nature that the people who are truly on Yah's side are the ones that are despised by the very people who claim to be on Yah's side. They despise his servants. Isn't that interesting how that works? And we're going to see that, at the end, at the feast, how many people who have been humiliated and despised in life and rejected are going to be put into the seat of honor. And those who were trying to seat themselves in the seat of honor are not going to be there. Now, this comes from the book of the Nazarene. One of the Talmudim asks, how shall we judge what people do, whether it be good or whether it be bad? And Yahushua said, if you are unsure whether a person's actions be good or bad, incline in his favor. All right. So always give people the benefit of the doubt. He actually talks about a situation where, I didn't pull it up, but he talks about a situation where a man's daughter is kidnapped, and one of the man's servants goes to get the daughter, but she's in a brothel. Like, she's been sold as a sex slave, basically. And he goes in there, and one of the other master servants sees the other servant coming out of the brothel. And it's kind of a raised eyebrow moment, like, why were you in the brothel? But he gave him the benefit of the doubt because he came out with he was there to get the master's daughter, right? Not to do the deed in another way. If anything may be interpreted favorably or otherwise, then interpret favorably. Always give the benefit of the doubt. Do not seek for wrongdoing like dogs chasing a foul smell. Unfortunately, a lot of people do that. They just go around online. They're always looking for that, to get the next whiff of poo. If a good man does something appearing to be bad, then withhold judgment, wondering whether there be some good motive behind it. So this is talking about people who already show fruit, okay? And you're looking at like, oh, did you see what that guy did over there? Now we're slandering the people. Now we're trying to hurt their reputation, right? No, give them the benefit of the doubt. Always give the benefit of the doubt. We've had situations like this come up in the last year where men who have shown really good fruit in the past, there are accusations that are brought forward, and it's like, I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt until it can be absolutely shown to be true. Yet do not be easily hoodwinked. If one with a bad reputation, all right, so the hoodwinked here is not by a person with a good reputation who's someone is slandering him. No, if one with a bad reputation does something seemingly good, yeah, question his motives. That's what Yahushua said, question his motives. But bear in mind that no man is either wholly good or wholly evil. Okay, so this goes with our government too. When we talk about how evil our government is, can our government do things that are good and righteous? Yes. Like they can say abortion is naughty. No, we're not going to do that anymore. Yes. I don't care how evil the government is. That is righteous. That's good. That's justice. Even if it's all staged, even if it's all scripted, I'll take that script. I'll take the script that says we're going to stand up against the murder of babies. All right. That's good. So drawing near, but not in holiness. Dun, dun, dun. Let's see what the Bible says about this. For all the people who say they're drawing near, but they're not really holy. All the people are going to stand next to Yahushua HaMashiach and say, yeah, I drew near to you because you're holy. And he's going to be like, that's nice. You're not holy. What are you doing standing here? Be gone. All right. I hate, now I've read some of these in the past weeks, but they deserve repeating. I despise your feasts. I cannot stand the stench of your solemn assemblies. Even though you offer me burnt offerings and grain offerings, I will not accept them. For your peace offerings of fats and cattle, I will have no regard. Take away from me the noise of your songs. I will not listen to the music of your harps, but let justice roll on like a river and righteousness like an ever-flowing stream. Amos 5:21-24. This one here, Isaiah, I've read this so many times the last few weeks. He says, you can see here, I hate your new moons. I hate your appointed feasts. They're a burden to me. Like basically it's repugnant. I want to vomit. I can't stand the smell of your incense in my nostrils, all this kind of stuff. And he just says right here, just wash and cleanse yourself, right? It's code word for just be a living sacrifice, guys. Be a living sacrifice day to day. Remove your evil deeds from my sight. Stop doing evil. All right. Stop checking off the boxes with all your fake repentance and you're holier than thou. Just, draw close to me. And so the idea here is that they're coming to the temple to draw near to him and they're not holy. Okay. This is an affront to basic Christian doctrine. The idea that you cannot be holy and you could draw close to Elohim. Unfortunately, they will be sadly mistaken or come to a rude awakening someday. Okay. He hates it. He hates it when unholy people approach him. All right. And of course, he says here, learn to do right. So pay attention. Like when he says learn to do right, what is it? Seek justice and correct the oppressor, defend the fatherless, and plead the case of the widow. Again, the heart of Yahuwah is caring for the widow, caring for the fatherless. Seek justice. Now, here's a great example. Yahusha cleanses the temple. After this, he went down to Capernaum, he and his mother and his brothers and his Talmudim, and they stayed there not many days. And the Passover of the Yahudim was near, which is so exciting. We're in Passover season now. And Yahusha went up to Jerusalem, and he found in the temple, now I highlighted this for you, in the temple, because people get really confused by this. They're like, why would he overturn these tables? They were exchanging money. They were taking, people were coming in with Roman coins, with the face of Caesar on it, and they were exchanging it for money they could give to the temple. And so in a way, it's like, well, that seems like a good thing. An atheist will point this out like, oh, well, Messiah was kind of an a-hole there to, turn over these tables. But it's like, no, let's see what is actually happening here. Okay. It's in the temple. In the temple, those selling oxen and sheep and doves, they're not on the outside. They could have been all up and down the street. They could have set up booths all along, all through Jerusalem, everywhere, all through the streets. You could go and exchange your money, not in the temple. And the money changer sitting, and having made a whip of cords, he drove out all from the temple, both sheep and oxen. So keep in mind there that the first thing he does here, he lets out the animals. And he poured out the coins of the money changers and overthrew the tables. And to those selling doves, he said, take these things from here. Do not make my father's house a house of trade. His Talmudim remembered that it is written, the zeal of your house will consume me. So the Yahudim answered and said to him, what sign do you show to us that you do these things? And Yahusha answered and said to them, destroy this temple, and in 3 days I will raise it up. Therefore, the Yahudim said, this temple was built in 46 years, and you will raise it up in 3 days. But of course, he was speaking concerning the temple of his body. All right. For lack of time, I don't need to read the rest. But just imagine this picture here that, you're trying to go in and Leviticus, you're trying to draw close to Yahuwah. You want to be holy. You want to draw close to him because he wants to draw close to you. And you've got all these tables, money changers, business, sheep and goats and bleeding. And you're trying to get up to make a sacrifice and working through the crowds. And it's killing this environment of worship, right? Like the point here is that they were in contempt. Those money changers and the priest, it was malpractice on the priest's part. They were not interested in drawing near to Yah. They weren't interested. They were all about making it a business. And that's why he did it. Not because of the money changing itself. People use that as misdirection. Well, here's the story according to Nazarene, the same story. The following day, Yahusha went to the great temple of the Yahudim, and going around it, came to the part where a fire was always maintained for the burnt offerings. There's that fire that could never be put out. Unfortunately, the fire was put out with the Babylonian conquest, maybe even before that. Maybe there was malpractice before that. But when this fire was rekindled again, it had to stay going night and day. And payment was made for its use. All right. So payment being made for its use, right? The money changers, so that you could take your animal up there and put it onto that altar of the fire that always burns. Here was the place where the father of Yochanan had been slain. Outside this was a hall where money was changed for those going in, the parashim not permitting this to be done within the courtyard. Seeing some men carrying vessels, Yahusha said to them, surely you know it is written that the temple shall not be made a thoroughfare. All right. Now they're still on the temple grounds here. They turn on him saying, where have you been? And who are you to rebuke us? Whereupon there was an outbreak of fighting between those with Yahusha and others. Yahusha also overturned the tables of the money changers, saying, you are just as bad, for you turn the house of Elohim into a marketplace. When the temple guards came to restore order, they said to Yahusha, we should kill you for this. Yahusha replied, destroy this temple, and in 3 days it will rise again. They, not understanding, answered, the temple has stood for long and took 46 years to build. If you say it can be built in 3 days, you are a fool. They did not know Yahusha referred to a temple not made by hands. All right, this is another passage from Nazarene talking about the same thing, about not drawing close to Yahuwah. Just then some parashim came by, and Yahusha knew them to be false to their declared beliefs. Now, elsewhere in Nazarene, he actually says 9 out of 10 Pharisees aren't that bad. He says 9 out of 10 Pharisees are bad. I mean, good. He says 1 out of the 10 is the leaven. That's the leaven of the Pharisees. Keep in mind, Mary Magdalene and her brother Lazarus and Martha, their father was a Pharisee. He was on really good terms with them, right? He was always using their garden. So he called out, Yahushua calls out to, I love this because he like sees the Pharisees walking by. You just see like Messiah turn his glance and he's looking at them and he calls out to them. He's always looking to get himself in trouble, I guess. He said, "Hear me, you hypocrites, you deceivers. Are you not among those declaring that any man swearing by the temple is not bound by his oath, but any swearing by the temple gold is bound? Fools! Which is the greater, the gold or the temple containing it?" I can show you plenty of scripture verses which this backs the same quote. "Or you say that those swearing by the altar are not bound by their oath, but those who swear by whatever is upon it are bound. Which is the greater, the offering or the altar consecrating it? You concern yourselves with selling incense and the small profits from herbs and perfumed candles, while overlooking more important matters. These petty things can be delegated to others. Or do you find weightier aspects of the Torah, such as mercy, justice, and truth, fighting beyond your abilities?" So it's like, ouch. It's like, you guys are just interested in making money and selling products that you could delegate to others, but you don't want to delegate it to others because apparently mercy, justice, and truth, it should be truth with a capital T there, that's too weighty for you. That's not, it's kind of beyond your pay grade. If so, then you deceive the people. Your minds are fixed on little things and cannot grasp greater ones. You strain a fly from the wine bowl, but leave the wasp. All right. All right. Ascending offerings. Let's talk about this. Now, I covered this. So I showed you ways to grow closer to Yah and ways not to. One is slander. That's really big. And the others there is, I showed you the examples there in the temple, right? But the Nazarene was a great comparison because the temple is also the body, right? And so the Parashim were not, even with in regards to their own bodies and the bodies of others, they were not seeking the right things. They were concerned about profit for filthy lucre's sake. So this comes from, I showed you last week, Leviticus 1:9, and I gave this example of, "And he shall wash in water his interior and his legs, and the priest shall burn incense with the whole on the altar to be an ascending offering of a sweet scent unto Yahuwah the ever-living." So what I did was, just a quick review, I gave this activity where I showed you Strong's Concordance, how each of these words, the inward part, can also mean approaching in Strong's, which is the theme of Leviticus. And then when you approach, the next word I showed leg, which can also mean to bow down, all right? And I also showed an offering made by fire to be a woman, wife, or female. Remember now, it's interesting that Pamela showed that the fire was feminine. She put she in there, and then we could make the comparison with the Ruach HaKodesh, as well as the bride of Mashiach. And so what I did was I translated this kind of esoterically. I showed you, this was my translation. I'm sure Pamela's probably rolling her eyes right now, like, oh, just leave the translations up to professionals. No, but this is what I came up with. "And he shall wash, or he shall baptize his interior. He shall draw near." Let me try this again. "And he shall baptize, draw near, bow down, and the priest shall burn incense with the whole on the altar to be an ascending wife of a sweet scent unto Yahuwah the ever-living." All right. I should have put salted on there too. Salted. So we can see here how we are to be that ascending living sacrifice. The whole idea of Leviticus is people are like, oh, the temple's done away with, right? Or the Torah's done away with, the temple's not there. It's like, well, no, you're a temple. You're a priest. You are to draw near and to be holy and do these things. So let's take a passage from this week. Actually, let's see. This might be from last week too, or it's this week. Okay. Anyways, this is what I pulled out here. "And he shall bring near the sacrifices of the shalom offerings, a fire offering unto Yahuwah the ever-living, his best, choicest fat with the thick, fat tail, perfect whole sound, in conjunction with the backbone. He shall turn aside with the best, choicest fat that covers the interior and all the choicest fat upon the interior, and the two kidneys with the best, choicest fat which is upon them, which is upon the loins, and the redundant greater lobe over the liver. Over the kidneys he shall turn aside, and the priest shall offer as odors upon the altar. It is the lachem of the fire offering to Yahuwah the ever-living. So let's look at the word kidney here. Strong's Concordance 3629. It can also mean heart, inmost being, inward parts, kidney, mind, minds within. We can also see the liver here. It means a heavy organ, but it can also mean weight, external abundance, riches. By weight, meaning, which is funny because it's the heavy organ, right? It's the weighty organ, but it can also mean an exterior abundance of riches, importance, and glory. All right. So let's translate this. We can see here, you could very well read the sacrifice as a living sacrifice, a shalom sacrifice. He shall place his heart, his inmost being, in his mind, with the choicest fat over the external abundance, riches, importance, and glory of himself. He's to lay all of himself, all of his own importance, all of his riches, all of his self-worth, all of his glory that he wants from other people, his very inmost being in his mind and his heart onto this fire. And the priest shall offer as odors upon the altar. That's how we're going to read Leviticus. We read these sacrifices and we say, how are we to approach this and put ourselves down as a living sacrifice? Now, I'm not done yet. I'm not, for lack of time, you can see here all of the living sacrifices. Okay. What I want to cover now is this important section, laying on of hands and fire, the ongoing sacrifice of priest. So we're going to be remember the idea that after everybody goes home, after they've made their sacrifices, they've laid their hands on it. Now, I want to talk a little bit about the laying of hands. Probably not going to go into too much depth today. But what about, I asked you earlier the question, how do we see ourselves in the cleanup process as priest, right? Not just being living sacrifices, but the cleanup, the ashes, and, cleaning all the bones and everything. So we're going to see, we saw Leviticus 1:3, Yasharel versus Leviticus 6:9, the priest. So the role of men, the process of offering and the active participation of drawing near could be shown in a verse like Leviticus 1:3. He said, he, the person, not the priest, he must bring it to the entrance to the tent of meeting, right? Not, hopefully the money changers and everything aren't in there, but they're on the outside, and you go in with you got your sacrifice, you bought it, either you brought it from home or you went and bought it. To the entrance of the tent of meeting for its acceptance before Yahuwah, he is to lay his hand on the head of the burnt offering. All right. So we'll see a little bit more about the idea of laying your hands on the offering. But then we see the role of priest, the aftermath of the offering, ongoing permanent features of the sacrifice. Then Yahuwah the ever-living set words in order toward Al-Mashahah to declare, command Aaron and his sons to declare, this is the Torah of the ascending offering. It is an ascending over a heap of fuel all night. You keep that fuel burning all night long until daybreak, and the fire of the altar shall burn in it. I couldn't help myself. Did someone say all night long? Maybe I just love the 80s. I don't really know. But you got to keep that fire burning all night long, guys. Yahuwah is a jealous lover, and he's passionate. He wants that fire burning all night long. So question, what does the after hours work of a Levite priest have to do with us? That's a good question. What is the book of what does any of this have to do with us, right? I thought not all the Torah applies to us because I'm not a Levite priest. Yeah, but you're a Melchizedek priest. So let's look at the remedial work of carrying the ashes. Well, for lack of time, I'm not going to repeat it all again, but the idea is that, you take off your tunic and you put on this other tunic that, you're going to get dirty in, and it's humbling work to just, they even talk about the dung. You got to take the dung out and burn the poop. Who wants that assignment? Guys, I worked with, on a chicken farm in Bethlehem and actually Israel in the heat of the summer. That was a nasty job. And it was very humbling work. And some priests, some priests get stuck with the day job with the barbecue, and then the night shift, the graveyard shift comes in, and they got to burn the poop and carry the ashes. All right. I quoted from the Greek LXX here, but yeah, for lack of time, I'm not going to read it. So, this is actually next week's portion. Let's look at this. The fire came from Yahuwah, and this is an important point I need to make. I'll repeat it next week. It says here that fire came forth from Yahuwah and devoured the offerings on the altar, both the whole burnt offerings and the fat, and all the people saw and were amazed and fell upon their faces. No priest lit that fire, guys. No, there were no matches, nothing like that. No blowtorch. It was Yahuwah sitting fire down from heaven. This is I think the fire. This is a representation of the fire of the Ruach HaKodesh coming down. The people were amazed when they saw it. Well, let's see what the Jonathan Targum says of the same passage. But when, after the oblations had been performed, the Shekinah did not reveal itself. The Shekinah glory being the Ruach HaKodesh, or I guess the presence of the Shekinah glory of Yahuwah. Aaron was ashamed and said to Moshe, "It may be that the word of Yahuwah hath no pleasure in the work of my hands." Then went Moshe and Aaron into the tabernacle of ordinance and prayed for the people of the house of Yasharel, and came forth and blessed the people and said, "May the word of Yahuwah receive your oblations with favor and remit and forgive your sins." Then instantly the glory of Yahuwah's Shekinah revealed itself to all the people, and the fire came forth from the presence of Yahuwah and consumed upon the altar the sacrifice and the fat. And the people saw and gave praise and bowed in prayer upon their faces. So again, this is why you got to keep that fire burning all night long. All right. Because what happens if you let it go out by malpractice? That was it, guys. That was a Shekinah glory. It came down and it's not promised to come down again. Like, oops, sorry. Yeah, we forgot to tend to it last night. Can you come and light this again? Like, this is important because they need this for the sins of the people, right? All right. Now, notice here how Aaron could not bring the fire down, but Moshe. Now, it only says that in the Aramaic Targum. Take that for what it is. I find it fascinating because it's basically saying that it had to come through the intercession of Moshe, who is the Mashiach figure here. He's the intercession of Yahushua HaMashiach. The priest couldn't do it. Moshe did, though. Isn't that interesting? And I only found that in the Aramaic Targum. All right, so let's start reading through some of these passages here. 1 Thessalonians 5:12 through 19. But we ask you, brothers, to acknowledge those who work diligently among you, who preside over you in Yahuwah and give you instruction. In love, hold them in highest regard because of their work. Live in peace with one another. This is talking about ministry leaders. If someone is a ministry leader, hold them in respect. I'm not just talking about myself here, guys. I'm just talking about when you guys go around anyone listening to this. I'm not thinking about anyone in my mind, but when you guys go out to other ministries and you see people laboring as priests for the kingdom, hold them in respect. Even if you disagree with them, it's like, so what if they believe the shape of the earth is different from you? Hold them in respect. All right. So what if they haven't heard about the mud flood yet? Just like recognize who they're serving. In love, hold them in the highest regard because of their work. And we urge you, brothers, to admonish the unruly. So those who are going around causing the trouble, encourage the faint-hearted, help the weak, and be patient with everyone. Make sure that no one repays evil for evil. Always pursue what is good for one another and for all people. Rejoice at all times. Thanksgiving offering. Pray without ceasing. Give thanks in every circumstance. Thanksgiving offering, shalom offering, right? Because we're supposed to live in peace, shalom with one another. Living sacrifice. That's how we're living sacrifice, live in peace. For this is Allah Hayam's will for you and Mashiach Yahusha. Do not extinguish the Ruach. There it is. Do not extinguish the fire, priest. I'm speaking all to the Melchizedek priests out there. Do not extinguish the fire of the Ruach. Do not treat prophecies with contempt. So it tells you, what is one of the ways you can extinguish the Ruach? Treating prophecy with contempt. What kind of prophecy are we talking about here? Are we talking about 1948 prophecy? Are we talking about Hal Lindsey? Are we talking about Left Behind? What are we talking about here? I will explain. But test all things. The Deuteronomy 13 test. That just explained what the prophecy is, by the way. Hold fast to what is good. Abstain from every form of evil. 1 Thessalonians 5:12 through 19. All right. Zechariah 2:4 through 5 says, for lack of time, you can see there the wall of fire around New Jerusalem. If you have any questions about that, just watch the last week's presentation or the one I did this last week on the Pilgrim's Path. And I talked about how New Jerusalem, in terms of the body of Mashiach and the wall of fire being the Ruach HaKodesh. Of course, Gospel Luke says here in 3:16, He will baptize you with the Ruach HaKodesh and fire. Okay. So we don't want to quench the fire from above, the Ruach HaKodesh. Priest, speaking to you, all the priests out there. Okay, here's a good one. 2 Timothy 1, 6-7. For this reason, I remind you to fan and to flame the gift of Allah Hayam, which is in you through the laying on of hands. So now we're returning to the idea of laying on of hands, the transferring of power, a laying on of hands, and you keep that flame going. The flame comes through that, through the laying on of hands, right? Flame from one person to the next. All right, 1 Timothy 4, 14-16 says, do not neglect the gift that is in you, which was given you through the prophecy. What's this prophecy? Spoken over you at the laying on of the hands of the elders. The elders have come, laid on hands, transferred their power to you. It's the same way that, like, if you put your hands on the offering, the animal, and you pass your sin to this animal takes your guilt. They are basically laying on the power of Mashiach onto you, the Ruach HaKodesh, the fire coming upon you. Be diligent. It's almost like you think of it like the torches, right? You pass torches, like maybe you're running with the torch and you hold it, they light their torch, and then they run and they light the torch with somebody else. Be diligent in these matters and absorbed in them so that your progress will be evident to all. All right, so what is prophecy? It says right here in Revelation 19:10, this is, you guys can disagree, this is my view of prophecy. Then I fell down at his feet to worship him, but he said to me, you must not do that. I am a fellow servant with you and your brothers who hold to the testimony of Yahusha. Worship Allah Hayam, for the testimony of Yahusha is, there it is, the spirit of prophecy. The testimony of Yahusha. Of course, Yahusha said that Moshe testified of him. So we know that the spirit of prophecy, according to the Deuteronomy 13 test, is the Father's commands and Yahushua HaMashiach. That's the spirit of prophecy, guys. It's not about 1948 or when the fig tree generation is, or the shape of the earth, or when the Antichrist is going to come, and whether he's going to be Nimrod resurrected or whatever. The spirit of prophecy is, what's happening with, the sun being eclipsed and this and that, and whether it's 7 years or 3.5 years or whatever. It's the Torah, the Father's commands, Yahushua HaMashiach. That is the spirit of prophecy. That's it. This is why this is the blasphemy of the spirit that we saw earlier. I'll read it again in the Didache right now. And every prophet that speaks in the Ruach, you shall not neither try nor judge, for every sin shall be forgiven, but this sin shall not be forgiven. All right. And it says that the true, as I said earlier, the true prophet is the one who holds the ways of Yahuwah. Deuteronomy 13 test. That is, guys, that is the key to all of this. Not taught in the churches, unfortunately. For lack of time. So this is, you guys probably have heard, the Ezekiel passage where Ezekiel's told to lay on each side 390 days for Yasharel, 1 day for each year of their transgression, and then 40 days for Judah. He has to turn from side to side, and it's basically the idea is the iniquity is placed on him. We see here in Leviticus 16, we'll get to it, the scapegoat. So I don't need to talk about the scapegoat today because we'll cover that in a week or two. I'll put more detail into that. Let's read this here while we're in it. This comes from the famous passage in Isaiah chapter 53. But he was pierced for our transgressions. He was crushed for our iniquities. The punishment that brought us peace, or brought us shalom, was upon him. And by his stripes we are healed. We all like sheep have gone astray. Each one has turned to his own way. And Yahweh has laid upon him the iniquity of us all. So laid on, our sins onto him by the holding down of a hand. He was oppressed and afflicted, yet he did not open his mouth. He was led like a lamb to the slaughter, and as a sheep before his shearers is silent, so he did not open his mouth. By oppression and judgment he was taken away, and who can recount his descendants? For he was cut off from the land of the living. He was stricken for the transgression of my people. He was assigned a grave with the wicked and with a rich man in his death. Although he had done no violence, nor was any deceit in his mouth, yet it was Yahweh's will to crush him and to cause him to suffer. And when his soul is made a guilt offering, he will see his offspring, he will prolong his days, and the good pleasure of Yahweh will prosper in his hand after the anguish of his soul. He will see the light of life and be satisfied. By his knowledge, my righteous servant will justify many, and he will bear their iniquities. A couple more from Matthew 8:17. It says that what we just saw here in Yeshayahu is fulfilled in Mashiach when he said he himself took our infirmities and carried away our diseases. Now, it's interesting here that in the kingdom of the gospel of the kingdom is defined as healing every sickness and every disease among the people. So it doesn't straight up say it here, but it seems to imply a laying on of hands, casting out demons, healing sicknesses, this transferring of power from person to person. Something very powerful about the laying on of hands. Oh man, I have more to cover. Okay, well, let's hold with me here a couple more minutes, guys. I know some of you are anxious. I know some people have been dropping out to go to the whatever other show is live right now. All right. Therefore, brothers, since we have confidence to enter the most holy place by the blood of Yahushua. So now it's talking about the Melchizedek priesthood, by the new and living way opened for us through the curtain of his body. Remember, because he is the door. It was torn open. And this was the Hekel gate. And since we have a great peace over the house of Elohim, let us draw near. There it is, Leviticus. Let us Leviticus with a sincere heart in full assurance of faith, having our hearts sprinkled to cleanse us from a guilty conscience and our bodies washed with pure water. Let us hold resolutely to the hope we profess, for he who promised is faithful, and let us consider how to spur one another on to love and good deeds. Let us not neglect meeting together as some have made a habit, but let us encourage one another, and all the more as you see the day approaching. And here's the important part. Now remember, we committed unconscious sin, and those sins are easily forgiven. But if we deliberately go on sinning after we have received the knowledge of truth, this is the dangerous part. The people who come close to truth, you better want it, because if you don't want the truth, there's going to be trouble. If we deliberately go on sinning, now that they're no longer unconscious sins, you have a knowledge of the transgression of the Torah. No further sacrifice for sins remains, but only a fearful expectation of judgment and of raging fire that will consume all adversaries. Anyone who rejected the Torah of Moshe died without mercy on the testimony of 2 or 3 witnesses. How much more severely do you think one deserves to be punished who has trampled on the Son of Elohim, profaned the blood of the covenant that sanctified him, and insulted the Ruach of grace? So right there you see the blasphemy of the Spirit, the Son. Of course, Son is Yahuwah. It adds, but there's the salt covenant too. The salt fire, the raging fire that will consume all. It's like all there, guys. Everything I talk to, the cogwheels are turning. Whole Bible comes into focus. I hope you guys appreciate my attempt here at taking these Torah portions and showing how it connects with the prophets, with the Psalms, with the Gospels, with the letters of Paul, with Revelation. And I've been reading a lot of medieval literature recently, and it's interesting reading from like these so-called nunneries and stuff where they're writing from, and they all talk about this. They talk about how before they came to the faith, they committed terrible sins. I mean, they don't even want to recount. They say they're so shameful, and they don't even want people to know about it because they don't want people to stumble how bad these sins were. But they say that now that they know the truth and that they're in the truth, they basically almost quote passages like this from Hebrews, where it's like, if you sin now, like you're falling from grace and there's like no coming back. Like you get to a point where you need to take it seriously and go, I'm not a child anymore. I'm not on milk anymore. I'm a meat eater now. It's time to take this seriously. It is time not to betray Mashiach and go off and commit these whoredom towards other gods. All right, I'm closing tonight. Let's look at the Shalom Thanksgiving offering, which I said I would cover. And we see here that they are unfermented cakes mingled with oil, and unfermented waters anointed with oil, and fine flour or meal cakes dipped in oil. Over the cakes is fermented bread. All right. Now remember now that most of the sacrifices are Thanksgiving Shalom sacrifices. And this is one of the things that it's not talked about, which is a shame, because the whole New Testament is just about the atoning sacrifice has been made for you. You don't have to slaughter animals anymore. Just live a day-to-day living sacrifice, Shalom Thanksgiving offering. All right. Now, right here in Matthew, it says, chapter 16, if anyone wants to come after me, he must deny himself and take up his cross and follow me. I think there's a lot there about Sukkot and New Jerusalem and pilgrimages. I wish I would have covered in my presentation this week, but I digress. For whoever wants to save his life will lose it, but whoever loses his life for my sake will find it. What is he talking about here? He's talking about getting on that griddle, guys, and being a living sacrifice. You climb up there, you bend over, you bend down in humility. You take your heart, you take your mind, you take all your glory, all your self-knowledge, all your pride, all your ego. You lay it on there every single day. You lose your life and you will find it. But those who do not want to be a living sacrifice, they are trying to save their own life. They're going to lose it. Now, of course, I'm reminded of in more practical examples of the cough that rolled through a few years ago, and you guys all know, the Nephilim prick, and unfortunately, how many people were trying to save their life and they lost it, and they're in bad health now, or dying, or already dead. It's sad. They didn't trust Yah. Well, it says here in Psalm 107, let's read the whole thing. Fools in the rebellious ways and through their iniquities suffered affliction. They loathed all food and drew near to the gates of death. For they cried out to Yahweh in their trouble, and he saved them from their distress. Kind of like the thief on the cross. He sent forth his word and healed them. He rescued them from the pits of Sheol, which the thief on the cross was saved from. He was the first not to ever have to go there. Let them give thanks to Yahweh for his loving devotion and his wonders to the sons of men. Let them offer sacrifices of thanksgiving and declare his works with rejoicing. Psalm 107. Matthew 26:28, Last Supper, now Passover supper, before he was betrayed. Now as they were eating, Yahushua took bread, and after blessing it, broke it and gave it to the Talmudim and said, "Take, eat, this is my body." And it's interesting then that when we see in Yochanan 20, we see him, it says, Miriam of Migdal went and announced to the Talmudim, "I have seen Yahuwah," and she told them what he had said to her. It was the first day of the week, Sunday. Of course, he resurrected on Sabbath. And that very evening, about 24 hours later, while the Talmudim were together with the doors locked for fear of the Yahudim, Yahusha came and stood among them. And what does he say? He says, "Shalom be with you." The living sacrifice, the Shalom sacrifice, Thanksgiving offering, be with you. And of course, we see doubting Thomas. And so skipping down to verse 26, 8 days later, his Talmudim were once again inside with the doors locked. And Teom was with them, doubting Thomas. Yahushua came and stood among them and said, "Shalom be with you." First thing he says out of his mouth. Remember, so it's kind of interesting, like the bread he broke at the Last Supper and stuff, and like the first things coming out, right? So Ma'asim, that would be Acts chapter 10. This is Kepha. Then Kepha began to speak. "I now truly understand that Allah Hayam does not show favoritism, but welcomes those from every nation who fears him and do what is right." Pastors love to leave out this quote. They always say that his vision was all about, "I can eat whatever animal I want now." No, he says, no, actually he just defines for you right there what the vision's about. He has sent this message to the people of Yasharel. So the message that goes to Yasharel is not that you can eat gorilla or puppy. It's that every nation is welcome who fear him and do what is right. Okay? It's not entitlement. This is not entitlement. He will draw near to those who draw near to him. So now the nations can draw near to him and he will draw near to them. And so he has sent this message to the people of Yasharel, proclaiming the gospel of Shalom, through Yahusha HaMashiach. Hebrews 13:15-16 says, therefore, by him, let us continually offer the sacrifice of praise to Allah Hayam, that is the fruit of our lips, giving thanks to his name. But do not forget to do good and to share, for with such sacrifice, Allah Hayam is well pleased. That is drawing near to him, Leviticus, bowing down to him, putting all of ourselves, losing our lives on that altar and giving him thanks for our very life, for our salvation, because he has done the sacrifice on our behalf. And let the shalom of Allah Hayam rule in your hearts, to which also you were called in one body, and be thankful. That one body would be Mashiach. And we're going to close on that tonight. Hope you guys enjoyed that. I put a lot of thought into that, a lot of research, and hopefully it blesses you and encourages you and strengthens you in your walk. And my big thing in this that I say over and over again is I as a ministry, I want to give you permission to take control over your own spiritual fate. Okay, there's no other pastor to depend on, nobody else. You have to do it. You have to make those decisions for you and your household to draw near to Allah Hayam, to Yahuwah, to be a living sacrifice for him by being obedient to him. There's nothing more I can say. Ending it tonight. Love you guys. Good night. Have a good Sabbath.